All right, so you're thinking about selling your business. Huge decision, right? And you've sent us a whole stack of articles to help figure it all out. We've got Forbes, we've got a piece from CO by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and even some insights from Business News Daily. So consider this your deep dive into whether selling is the right move.
Yeah, it's definitely not something to jump into without thinking it through. Actually, one of the articles mentioned a stat that kind of scared me. 75% of business owners end up regretting selling within a year.
Whoa, talk about seller's remorse. I bet a lot of that comes from just not being prepared. So before we even think about valuations and contracts and all that, maybe we should start with a more basic question. Why are you even selling in the first place?
It's the foundation of it all, isn't it? You wouldn't build a house without a blueprint. So are you picturing a peaceful retirement? Maybe launching that new venture you've always dreamed of? Or are you just ready for something different?
I get it. Maybe the entrepreneurial grind isn't so shiny anymore. Or maybe you're just burnt out. But each reason is going to change how you approach this whole thing, right?
Oh, absolutely. For instance, if you're retiring, maybe you're laser focused on getting the highest offer possible. But if you're passionate about your business's legacy, you might want to find a buyer who shares your values and your vision for the future.
Okay, that makes sense. So figure out your why first, because it's going to be our compass for this whole deep dive. All right, got it. My why is locked and loaded. But what about the business itself? Do I just slap a for sale sign on the door and call it a day?
Oh, definitely not. It's kind of like when you're selling your house, right? You want to spruce things up a bit, make it look good for those potential buyers.
Yeah, you're not showing a house with chipped paint and a leaky faucet, so what's the business version of that? It's got to be more than just tidying up the office, right?
You got it. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty. Your financials, for example, need to be spotless. Business News Daily really emphasize that. Think clear records, accurate bookkeeping, total transparency.
Okay, no cooked books or hidden skeletons, so it's all about building trust. Showing buyers that they're getting a solid business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the numbers. Having clear documented processes shows that the business can run smoothly, even without you there. Think step-by-step guides for everything, from managing clients to how to handle daily operations.
So I'm showing them, hey, look, this thing runs like a well-oiled machine, even if I'm not here. That makes sense, especially if I want to step away completely.
And your team matters too. A strong and capable team shows stability to buyers. If they walk in and see a bunch of engaged employees who know what they're doing, that's a huge plus.
I'm starting to see the bigger picture now. It's not just about me being ready to sell, it's about making the business as attractive as possible to buyers. But hold on a second. Let's say I've got my why figured out, and my business is looking pretty good. Is there anything else to consider? Shouldn't I be trying to sell when the market's hot and the offers are high?
You're thinking strategically, which is great. That brings us to market timing. Forbes had some really solid advice here. It's all about being a savvy market watcher. Think of it like this. Wouldn't you rather sell your house when the market's hot?
Totally. I don't want to be stuck trying to sell when everyone's holding on to their cash, so how do I know the best time to sell my business? It feels pretty complicated.
We'll start with your specific industry. What are the trends? Is there some new tech coming out that could change everything? Are there any new regulations that could impact your profits? These are the kind of things that buyers will be looking at too.
So I need to think about the big picture, not just my own little world. Are there any other market indicators I should keep an eye on?
Absolutely. Pay attention to economic forecasts. Is the economy growing or shrinking? Are interest rates going up or down? Those things can really affect how much people are willing to pay.
Wow, this timing thing is way more than I thought. All right, so timing's crucial. Got it. But now for the million-dollar question, how much is my business actually worth?
That's what it all comes down to, isn't it?
Yeah.
But before we get into formulas and all that, we need to address the emotional side. You've poured your heart and soul into this business.
Oh, absolutely. It's like my baby.
Yeah.
Isn't that passion part of its value?
I understand that. But buyers are going to look at it purely from a financial perspective. They want to know their return on investment. Sentiment doesn't really factor in.
Okay, I can try to be objective.
Yeah.
But how do you even begin to put a price on years of hard work? What actually determines a business's worth?
There are a lot of factors. Profitability is a big one. Buyers want to see consistent revenue and good margins. Then you've got your assets, equipment, inventory, real estate. It all adds up.
Right, the tangible stuff. But what about the stuff that's harder to measure? Like relationships with customers and your brand reputation? Don't those count too?
They absolutely do. That's where goodwill comes in. It represents the intangible assets, things like brand recognition, customer loyalty, the experience of your team.
Interesting. So goodwill is like the secret sauce that makes my business unique. But how do you measure that? It's not exactly on my balance sheet.
That's where professional valuation methods come in. They take all those factors into account, the tangible and the intangible, and come up with a fair market value. It's not something you want to try to do yourself.
Yeah, I wouldn't try to perform surgery on myself, so I definitely see the value in getting some help here. But hold on, the Business News Daily article mentions something called capital insensitivity. What's that all about?
Good catch. It's basically how much your business relies on physical assets to make money. For example, a factory with lots of expensive equipment would be considered capital intensive, compared to, say, a consulting firm that relies mostly on people's expertise.
Okay, so if my business depends more on people's skills than big machines, that could affect its valuation.
Exactly. It's all part of the valuation process.
Man, this is way more complex than I thought. It's like I'm swimming in the deep end here. But luckily, I've got you as my expert guide.
Glad to be here. But I think we've covered enough for now.
Yeah.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll get into the actual process of selling your business.
Sounds good to me. I'm ready to tackle those contracts and negotiations. See you in a bit.
Okay, so before the break, we talked about all the things to think about. Before you even think about selling, getting your financials in order, timing the market, figuring out your why. It's a lot. But now let's talk about actually finding a buyer. Where do we even start?
Well, you're not going to just stick a for sale sign in the window. Finding the right buyer is key. It's not just about getting the highest price. It's about finding someone who is the right fit for your business.
I like that. Fit over just a big number. So it's kind of like business matchmaking then. What are we looking for in this perfect match?
That's a good way to think about it. And it goes back to your why. If you want to see your business continue to grow under new leadership, you'll need someone who shares your values and your vision.
Right. It's got to be about more than just the bottom line. It's like finding a successor,
Yeah.
someone to carry the torch. Exactly. Now, the article from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce mentioned a specific type of buyer. Strategic buyers. These are usually companies in the same industry, sometimes even competitors, looking to grow their market share or get new technology.
Competitors. That feels a little weird. Would I really want to sell to someone I've been trying to beat all these years?
It really depends on your goals. Strategic buyers often bring something valuable to the table. They might have distribution channels, a wider customer base, expertise that you don't have. It could really be a win-win.
Okay, I can see how that might make sense in some situations. But wouldn't a competitor just want to take my business apart and absorb what they need?
That's a valid concern, and that's why due diligence is so important. You need to really understand the buyer's intentions and their history. Do they have a good track record with acquisitions? Or do they tend to just strip a business for parts and move on?
Okay, so it's about looking beyond just the offer on the table, really understanding the buyer's plans. This is where having a good broker is important, right? Someone to spot those red flags and steer me in the right direction.
Exactly. A good broker understands the market and knows the players. They can connect you with buyers who are a good fit for what you want. And they'll help you with all the complicated stuff, the due diligence, the negotiations, all the legal things.
Okay, so broker check. But what about me? What can I do to make my business more attractive to buyers?
Or remember, all that prep work we talked about, getting your financials in order, documenting your processes, having a solid team in place, that's all really important. It shows buyers that you've got a strong foundation.
Right, so it's like setting the stage, making my business shine. But how do I actually get it in front of these potential buyers? Do I need like a fancy website or something?
A good online presence is important, but don't underestimate your network. Talk to your advisors, your mentors, people in your industry. Let them know you're thinking about selling. You never know who might have a connection to the perfect buyer.
Right, it's about being strategic. I don't want to shout from the rooftops before I'm ready. But let's say I've got a few potential buyers who seem promising. This is where the negotiations start, right? Any tips for a smooth negotiation?
Well, first things first, remember your worth. Don't undervalue your business. And don't let anyone pressure you into accepting a lowball offer.
Got it. Know my worth, stand my ground. But how do I know what that number actually is? Isn't that where things can get kind of subjective?
This is where that professional valuation we talked about comes in. It gives you a solid starting point. But think about your walkaway point, too.
Yeah.
What's the absolute minimum you'd be willing to accept?
Interesting. So it's like a game of poker. I got to have my poker face on and know when to walk away from the table.
That's a good analogy. You need to go in prepared, understand the buyer's motivations, and be ready to counter their offers.
This is getting intense. I'm feeling the pressure already. I guess this is really where having a good broker pays off.
Absolutely. They're your advocate throughout the whole process. They'll make sure you're getting a fair deal. They handle all the back and forth. And they can keep things from getting too emotional, which is important because, let's face it, selling something you've built from the ground up is a big deal.
Oh, for sure. Even if I'm excited about moving on, there's going to be some sadness there, some nostalgia.
It's like saying goodbye to an old friend.
Yeah.
So let yourself feel those feelings. Don't try to ignore them.
But wouldn't focusing on those feelings just make it harder to let go?
It's not about dwelling on the negative. It's about acknowledging what this business has meant to you. Talk to someone you trust. Maybe another entrepreneur who's been through it. Sharing those feelings can help you process them.
Okay, so feel the feels, but don't let them take over.
Exactly. And remember, selling your business doesn't erase everything you've accomplished.
Yeah.
You'll always have the memories, the lessons you learned, the pride of building something from nothing.
That's a good point. It's not the end. It's a new beginning. All right. I'm feeling a bit more grounded now. So let's say the negotiations are going well. We're close to a deal. Can I pop the champagne yet?
Not so fast. We still got a few important steps before we celebrate. Remember all those contracts we talked about? This is where they come in.
Yeah, the legal stuff. This is where it gets a little overwhelming, right?
Contracts can be complex,
Mm.
but they're there to protect both you and the buyer. This is where your lawyer really earns their fees.
Okay, so lawyer check. But what kind of things should I be looking out for in these contracts? Any red flags that would make me say, hold on a second?
One thing to pay close attention to is the non-compete clause. It basically says that you can't start a similar business within a certain area for a certain amount of time. It's to protect the buyer's investment, but you want to make sure the terms are fair.
So if I sold my bakery, I couldn't just open a new one across the street the next day. That makes sense. I wouldn't want to be competing with myself.
Exactly. Another thing to watch out for is the earn-out agreement. This is where part of the purchase price depends on the business hitting certain targets after the sale.
Oh, so it's kind of like a bonus. If the business does well after I'm gone, I get more money.
That's the idea. It's a way to keep everyone's incentives aligned, but you want to make sure those targets are realistic. You don't want to be penalized for things you can't control.
Right, it's got to be fair. So these contracts are like a balancing act, making sure everyone's interests are taken care of.
Precisely. And remember, your lawyer is there to explain everything to you. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Make sure you understand every single thing before you sign.
Got it. No signing anything I don't understand. So let's say everything's signed, the contracts are all good. I'm ready to hand over the keys to my business kingdom. What happens next? Do I just walk away and start my new life?
Or almost. There's still the closing process.
Okay.
This is where you transfer ownership, finalize payments, and make sure all the legal and administrative details are wrapped up.
I'm sensing a pattern here. Lots of details, lots of paperwork.
That's right. It can be a bit complicated, but it's the final step before you can officially say, mission accomplished. Your broker, your lawyer, your accountant, they'll all be involved in making sure things go smoothly.
So it's like the final act of a play. All the actors are in place, the stage is set. We just need to make sure the grand finale goes off without a hitch.
I like that analogy. And once the curtain falls, you can take a bow, celebrate your success, and start your next adventure.
Okay, I'm already picturing that celebratory champagne. But before we get too carried away, maybe we should talk about what happens after the sale. What does life look like for an ex-entrepreneur?
That's the real question, isn't it? It all goes back to your why. What are your goals for this next chapter of your life? Are you dreaming of relaxing on a beach, starting a new business, or something else entirely?
Right, it all comes full circle. The why that got me to this point should guide my next steps. But what if I don't have a clear vision yet? What if I feel kind of lost?
That's completely normal. It's a big transition. You've been so focused on your business that it makes sense to feel a little adrift now.
So how do I navigate this uncharted territory? Do I need like a life coach or something?
Maybe, but you already have a lot of the tools you need. You've got experience. You've learned to solve problems. You've built resilience through your entrepreneurial journey. Those are valuable skills no matter what you do next.
So it's like taking those entrepreneurial superpowers and applying them to something new.
Exactly.
But where do I even begin? There are so many possibilities, it's almost overwhelming.
Take a breath.
Yeah.
You don't need to have all the answers right away. Give yourself time to decompress, to reflect, to explore. What are you passionate about? What makes you come alive?
Okay, so rediscover myself. Figure out what really excites me now that I have the time and freedom to do it. But what if that passion is starting another business? Am I crazy for even thinking that?
Not at all. A lot of entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs. They love the challenge of building something new. But if that's your path, Make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, not just out of habit or fear.
Okay, be honest with myself. But let's say I'm ready for a completely different chapter. Maybe travel the world, write a book, devote myself to a cause I care about.
Then go for it. You've earned the right to choose your own adventure.
This is both exciting and terrifying. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff ready to jump into the unknown.
Remember the journey of life. It's like the journey of entrepreneurship, full of unexpected turns. Embrace the uncertainty, learn from your experiences, and don't be afraid to take a chance.
That's inspiring. I'm starting to see this not as an ending, but as a beginning, a chance to write a whole new chapter. But wait a minute, what if I go through this whole process and I decide that selling isn't the right move after all? What happens then?
That's a great question. And it brings us to something really important.
Yeah.
That sometimes the best thing for your business is to not sell it.
Okay, so we go through all this prep work, talk to potential buyers, and then we decide to stay the course. What happens to all that effort we put in? Does it just go to waste?
Not at all. You might be surprised to hear this. But getting ready to sell can actually be really good for your business, even if you don't end up selling.
How does that work? How can getting ready to sell actually help my business if I don't sell it?
Think about everything we've talked about. You've dug deep into your financials. You've streamlined your operations. You've documented your processes. You might have even strengthened your team. It's like giving your business a complete makeover.
Yeah, it's like going to the doctor for a checkup. Even if they don't find anything major wrong, you still get a better understanding of your health. And maybe some tips for staying in good shape.
Exactly. And just like those healthy habits can prevent future problems, the changes you've made to your business can lead to better results, more profit, more efficiency, happier employees.
Okay, I get that. But it feels a little anticlimactic, doesn't it? All that prep work, all that anticipation, and then nothing changes.
Well, not necessarily nothing. You're not selling the business, but you've learned a lot about how it works. And you've probably found some areas where you can grow and improve.
So instead of a grand exit, it's more like hitting the refresh button, a chance to refocus my energy and come back even stronger.
Exactly. And remember, this decision to stay the course doesn't have to be forever. Maybe selling is still something you'll do down the line. But in the meantime, you can make your business even better, increase its value, make it irresistible to future buyers.
Okay, so it's not a failure to decide not to sell. It's a chance to refocus my energy and maybe even fall back in love with my business.
That's a great perspective. And remember, you're not alone in this. You've got your advisors, your broker, your lawyer, your accountant. They're still valuable resources even if you're not selling right now.
Right. They've been with me through this whole process. They know my business inside and out. But what about my employees? They've probably heard rumors about a potential sale. How do I get everyone back on board with this new direction?
Transparency is key. Be upfront with your team about the decision. Tell them why you changed your mind. Share your vision for the future. Make it clear that you're committed to the business and to their success.
So turn that potential disruption into a positive thing. Get everyone excited about this new chapter.
Exactly. When your team feels valued and informed, they're more likely to be engaged and committed to the company.
Wow. I'm really starting to see the upside here. Deciding not to sell could actually lead to even bigger things.
You never know what might happen.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive. From the emotional roller coaster of selling to the fine print of contracts, to the surprising benefits of not selling. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We've explored different perspectives and challenged some common assumptions. Hopefully, we've given you a better understanding of what it really means to sell a business.
But ultimately, the decision is yours. Only you can decide what's right for you and your business.
Trust your gut, do your research, talk to the experts, and don't rush into anything.
Absolutely. And whatever you decide, we're here to support you along the way. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.